That Psalm 27 that we wrote, turn it down a little bit. That Psalm 27 that we read on Elul is filled with images of warfare and hiding from, people who are rising up to destroy you and hiding in God. And there's a lot of warfare things in there, and yet it's read during Elul. It is not the time to go out for warfare. The time to go out for war is right after Rosh Hashanah, right after Yom Kippur, actually, during Sukkot, like right before Sukkot, in between the days of Yom Kippur and Sukkot, in the 7th month, which is winter. It's not fall, it's winter in the Bible. And it's a time for warfare. So we're like gearing up toward that. Now, I'm going to talk about something I rarely talk about, which is spiritual warfare. And it, like everything else in Judaism, is completely opposite from what normative Christianity thinks, knows, talks about, believes. There's some elements, obviously, that are the same, because the Holy Spirit talks to everybody who's a believer. But there's a lot that is different. A lot that is things that we have to relearn, that we don't know, that we are unknowledgeable about. When I teach, I've been teaching for 14 years. I teach art in a public school, and for 14 years, this is what I've seen. I've seen that everybody is in rank as a student. Not so much in rank with a grade, although I try to keep those two exactly the same, but in rank as a student. And you can't really give that a grade like A, B, C, D, E, F. I mean, A, B, C, D, E, F. But you can give it a number, because there's 100% of everything, right? There's 100% of everything, from 1 to 100%, and that's it. If you give a small amount, well, say you go to class, right? You go to class, and you're there, and you give a 20% energy, 20% concentration, 20% listening, actively listening with your heart, with your mind, with your eyes, with your brain, with your motives, and you only give 20% of that. That makes you an F student. You're an F student. And it's not enough to say, well, I'm in class, aren't I? It's not enough. It doesn't work. But once in a while, there's a student who gives everything. If I tell them to hang from the ceiling and spit nickels, they say, how much money do you want? I mean, they'll do anything I say, anything I ask, anything that they trust me enough to do. And that's what it all comes down to. Do you trust the trajectory of where God has you and where your leader is taking you?
Amen.
So,
amen.
It's a hard thing to do, to trust a human being. It's easy to trust God because He ain't here. And you can always just ignore what He says because He ain't here physically. Right? If God starts telling you something you don't want to hear, what do? Oh, no, yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, Lord. No, I hear you, oh God. I ain't doing that. They're both the same thing. They net the same result, which is, I ain't listening to you. And we can do that because God is not here physically. But what He has put here physically is rank. Now, you who are in the army, you know about rank.
Oh, yeah.
You are in the serving, serving people. You know rank. You and you and you, I trust implicitly. Because I know rank. And you know rank, and you know rank, and you know rank. You've been taught, I don't know if there's anybody else. You've been taught that you submit, not obey, although they'll tell you obey in the military. You submit to the one that's above you. Because that one above you is submitted to the one above you, who's submitted to the one above you, who's submitted to the one above you. Here's the problem. Christianity does not submit to Judaism.
Right.
They're constantly, and when I say they, I mean you. And me too, once in a great while. Because I got that junk in me too. I've listened to thousands of Christian teachings. I've got it in me too. Not as much as you, but I do. They constantly try to reinvent the wheel. The Jews have had it set for 4,000 years. And I'm going to show you this in the passage of the Torah that we're going to look at. I'm not just talking. I'm teaching from the Torah right now. Christianity has sought to reinvent the wheel, to redesign the plan of God, to redesign how to do the Bible, how to act the Bible, how to do it, how to live it out, instead of submitting to the one that's over them. Well, the one that's over them is not God. The one that's over them is the Jewish people. Moses, Joshua, the judges, the 70 elders who delivered it to the Sanhedrin, who delivered it to Israel. There's an order. It went right from God to Moshe and all the way down to the present day in Judaism. Yes. Yes, there are some things that have changed. There are some bad things in Judaism itself. But if you've got the Holy Spirit and your desire is to find out what's right and wrong according to the Torah, you're going to figure it out. You will. And if you can't figure it out, you go to the person who's above you, your rabbi. And you listen. You don't fight. You don't argue. You don't get on a merry-go-round and go around and around and around until you're both dizzy. You listen. And you try to figure it out. If you got questions, you can't figure it out, you try again. And you try again, and you try again, and you try again. But it starts with listening and submitting. Submitting. All right. Now this is what we're going to see in the Torah portion in Deuteronomy. That the whole thing is upside down and backwards. And it ties in with the last couple teachings I've given about you do the Tzion, for instance. And what do? You listen to it preach. It preaches and you listen to it. And then you get what? From what it's preaching. What do you get?
Knowledge.
You get, well, understanding. The understanding of God or faith. No, you're right. The knowledge of God. I'm sorry. You get the knowledge of God. The Da'at Adonai. Thank you. And, which is faith. But that's been flipped on its head. To where God gave a command, I'm going to obey. What do I do? Yes, sir, Lord, just tell me what to do. That's not how the military works. The military has a goal. And the guy above you knows what that goal is. And he tells the guy under him, and he tells the guy under him, and he tells the girl under him, and she tells the guy under him, and he tells the girl under him, and it gets down to you, and you say, okay, I'll do that. And you watch it blossom. You watch it happen. Now, Jewish warfare worked the same way. However, here's the problem. There's two different kinds of warfare. And I want to help you figure out which one you're supposed to wage and when. Let's go to Tetzeh is the name of the Torah portion. When you go out, Deuteronomy 21. And when it says you go out, it means go out to war. You're not going to like what I say today. I pretty much guarantee you. I hope you do. I'd be happy if you do, but I don't think you will. Okay. So before we read this, I want to tell you what I'm after, what I'm shooting at. Here's my goal. My goal is for you to stop praying like a Christian. That's my goal. And it's going to take time. And it's going to take working through some problems. But that's my goal. I want to try to teach you how to pray as God gave it to the Jews. And you're not going to learn it today. You're just going to figure out that there's a problem. That's all we're going to do today. I'm going to point out, hey, there's a problem. Let's start working on it. That's all. That's all I'm going to do. Okay. Deuteronomy 21. It's say when you go out to war. When you go out to battle against your enemies, when you go out to war. By the way, there's over 1,000 passages in the Bible about warfare. So you can see this could be a huge, huge teaching, right? I've narrowed it down very much. When you go out to battle against your enemies, or war against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hands, and you take them away captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and have a desire for her, and would take her as a wife for yourself, then you shall bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head, and doesn't say cut in Hebrew, it says do her head. She shall also remove the clothes of her captivity, and shall remain in your house. Now she sounds pretty ugly. She's cut all her hair off, trimmed her nails down to a stump, covered her head, removed her beautiful clothes, and made herself ugly, and stayed in the house, and mourned. She's crying. She's covered in ashes, and she's crying for a month. You don't want to go near that. And after that, you may go into her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. And immediately it says this, and it shall be if you're not pleased with her. Well, why would it say that? Because she's ugly. And the Torah tells you how to make her ugly, so that you will not be pleased with her. So that you will not be pleased with her. Because that's God's intention, which I'll show you. Then you shall it shall be, if you are not pleased with her, then you shall let her go wherever she wants. But you shall certainly not sell her for money, and don't mistreat her, because you've already humbled her. You're the one who treated her like this. You're the one who took her in your house, shaved her all up, cut her down, made her ugly, and then said, I'm not attracted to you, goodbye. So because you did that, you're going to have to treat her nice now. Just let her go do what she wants. Leave her alone. Treat her good. All right, with me so far?
Yep.
All right. Doesn't it say in the Bible somewhere, that when you go into the land of Israel, you're to annihilate everything that breathes?
Yes.
And how can you take a captive?
In some passages it says that.
Yeah, it does. Then how can you take a captive?
It doesn't say that.
How can you take a captive if God had told Israel, go into the land, I'm going to show you, by the way, go into the land and annihilate everything that breathes? And how can you take a captive? It doesn't make sense, does it? So there's a problem here. Well, not to the Jews, it's easy. Because there's two kinds of warfare. One warfare is obligatory. It means it's not a choice. Obligatory. Not a command. Not a command. Not something to obey, but obligatory. In other words, this is what you are to do. This is my instruction. That's what we're doing today in class. Right?
Yep.
The teacher says, that's what we're doing today in class. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. Sorry, that's what we're doing together. And what we're doing together is going into the land, and you're going to slaughter everything that breathes. Every man, every woman, every child, and all the animals. That's one kind of warfare. It's obligatory. But there's another kind of warfare. Look at how it starts. When you go out to battle, to warfare against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hands, well, it's already set that God's going to deliver them into your hands. This is a warfare that is not obligatory. It's of choice. It's a warfare of choice, which I'll show you in the Bible. So there's two different kinds of warfare. When you're doing spiritual warfare, you better know what you're doing. Are you doing something that God has directed you to do? Or are you doing it because you think that's the right thing to do? And you got a law in your mind, and you're going to quote that verse, come hell or high water, because that's what we do when we're praying for that. We pray this verse. It's insanity. It's obedience, and it doesn't work. However, if you come up to somebody and you see something and you feel like praying, and you feel it inside to pray, it's your choice. It's your choice. It's not a command. You better figure out the right way to do that warfare. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So far. So we got several things working here together. So the verse that we're going to focus on is that first verse. When you go out to battle against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hands, and you take them away captive. What kind of warfare is this?
Voluntary.
What kind of warfare is this? Choice. What did you say?
Voluntary.
Voluntary, non-obligatory. Right. It's a war. It's an optional war of choice. It is not obligatory. Now let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 20, same area, the laws for warfare, in verse 16. Only in the cities, well, I'll tell you what, verse 14. Only the women and the children and the animals and all that is in the city and its spoil you shall take as booty for yourself. Is that optional?
Yep.
Or is it obligatory?
Optional.
That's optional, that's choice. And you shall use the spoil of your enemies, which the Lord your God has given you. And then to tell us specifically, thus you shall do to all the cities that are far from you, not in Israel, the ones that are far away from you. Not of the cities of these nations nearby. So, he's going to tell them, you go into Israel. You're going to go in, you're going to see all these cities that are bad guys, and you're going to slaughter everybody. Get rid of every Nazi and every Nazi child. Maybe you can understand that. Get rid of every ISIS member and every ISIS member's child and all their animals. Get rid of them. I want them off the planet. This isn't talking about that. This is talking about if they're far away from you.
Been there, done that.
Okay. If they're far away from you, this is not obligatory. This is what you do to the cities that are very far from you, which are not in the cities of these nations nearby. Only in the cities of these peoples that the Lord your God has given you as inheritance, in other words, nearby in Israel, you shall not leave alive anything that breathes. So here's both warfares, obligatory and choice. But you shall utterly destroy them. The Hittite, Amorite, Canaanite, Perizzite, Hivite, Jebusite. Look at me. How many nations were listed?
That was 5.
Huh, interesting. All right. Just as the Lord has established for you.
That was 6.
Why? In order that they may not teach you to do according to all the detestable, disgusting ways of the Gentiles. That's God's rationale. To keep the classroom clean. That's God's rationale.
6.
We'll get back to that. Very good. All right. Now, the obligatory war. He gave us both. He gave us obligatory and non-obligatory. In that passage about the poor lady that gets taken captive, this is what the rabbis say, Rashi being the biggest one. He says, you shave her head. This is ugly. She takes all her fingernails off, like trims them down real short. That's ugly. She takes off her clothing that was used to entice the enemy. In other words, this is how the Gentiles used to do it. They would dress up as beautiful as they could to entice Israel. And it worked. The Midianites did it, and it worked. She takes that off. She's ugly. 3 things make her ugly. Then she sits in the house, covers herself in ashes, and mourns. Ugly. And the purpose was to make her ugly so that you would be disgusted by her. God never told them to take that Gentile woman, did he?
No.
Did he?
No.
Did God ever say to Israel, I want you to go in and take 47,000 women for yourself from the Moabites? I want you to go into Israel and take 3,000 Canaanite women and put them into Israel and bless me. He said just the opposite. He said, I want them gone. You took them because they were far away and it was a non-obligatory war. You chose to do it. I didn't tell you to do it. You chose to do it. Now you're going to pay the price. You're going to make it disgusting to yourself. why those two verses are linked. You make her ugly when she becomes disgusting in your sight. Well, duh, you just made her disgusting in your sight. So that's why they're put next to each other. Numbers chapter 21. Let's look at some warfare just a little bit. Now, how does this relate to prayer? How does this work relate to spiritual warfare? By the way, the Bible never says spiritual warfare, not once. So why do we use that phrase? Why do we use that phrase? Because somebody in the church made it up. It's spiritual warfare. It's not physical warfare, it's spiritual warfare. The weapons of our warfare are spiritual. See, spiritual warfare. The verse never appears. The phrase never appears in the Bible. Maybe we should use it. Numbers 21. When the Canaanite, the king of Arad, who lived in the Negev, if you're going to go make war on the Canaanites in the Negev, is that an optional or obligatory or non-obligatory war? Is it choice or obligatory? They're Canaanites in the Negev. Is that obligatory or choice?
Obligatory.
This is obligatory because they're in Israel. Heard that Israel was coming by the way of Atharim, then he fought against Israel. He went and fought against Israel and took some of them captive, took some of the Jews captive. So Israel made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver this people into my hand, I will utterly destroy their cities. Completely. Is that good or bad? It's good, because that's what God said to do in an obligatory war.
Yep.
Destroy everything that breathes. Everything that breathes. Verse 3. The Lord heard the voice of Israel and delivered up the Canaanites. Then they utterly destroyed them and their cities. So that they made a place called Hormah, which means like desolate. Just completely blown to shreds. All right, let's go to verse 21. Wait, not 21 yet. Yeah, let's go to 21. Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites. Now there were two giant kings, Og and Sihon. They were Amorites, and they were not in Israel. They were on the other side of the Jordan. They were in the land that was going to be taken by 3 of the tribes, but it wasn't in Israel proper. But it was going to be owned by Manasseh, Gad, and I just blanked out. There's another one. Manasseh, Gad, and somebody else. I can't remember. Maybe it was just Manasseh and Gad. So, because in the future it was going to be owned by Israel, but it wasn't yet. It wasn't yet. Sihon and Og were the giants. It was going to be owned by the Jewish tribes, Manasseh and Gad, and maybe another one. So because it was going to be owned by Israel, is that an obligatory or non-obligatory war?
Obligatory.
Obligatory. So they have to go in and kill Sihon and Og, the giants, and all the giants that live there, and they did it. They took 60 cities. 60 cities. And this is before they even go into the land of Israel. 60 cities. It's amazing. Look at verse 24. Israel struck him with the edge of the sword, took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Yabok. Verse 25. Israel took all these cities, and Israel lived in the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon and all the villages. Go down to verse 31. Israel lived in the land of the Amorites, and Moshe sent to spy out Yazer, and then they go and they have another war with focus. All right, so they have this amazing, just amazing win, big victory. Now go to Numbers chapter 31. Right after they had this amazing victory, guess what happened? Balaam and Balak. Balak was hired from Mesopotamia to come all the way down to the desert of Sihon and Og. Not desert, the plains of Sihon and Og. And to entice Israel to sin. Guess how he did it? The women. The women enticed Israel to sin. Right after this huge victory. And God specifically said, in a war that is obligatory, you wipe out everything. But they didn't. They didn't. Chapter, let's say 31. The Lord spoke to Moshe saying, take full vengeance for the sons of Israel on the Midianites. Now, what the Midianites did was they sent their women out to entice the Jews, and they got them to do idolatry. And so God slaughtered a bunch of them. Verse 7, so they made war against Midian, just like the Lord had established to Moses, and they killed every male. Is this obligatory or not obligatory? Obligatory or not obligatory?
Obligatory.
It's in the land that Israel owns. It's obligatory. And they killed the kings of Midian, so they just destroyed everything. Verse 9, and the sons of Israel, captured the women of Midian, and their little ones, and all their cattle, and all their flocks, and all their goods.
Yeah.
This is not, no, it is obligatory.
They captured, so they kept them.
They weren't supposed to do that. It was obligatory. And it ended up causing a lot of problems later on.
Yep.
Okay. This is an obligatory war. Well, look what God's answer for this is. Well, I mean, think about this. What do you think God's going to say to do? There are now, we'll say, 26,000 women that are Midianites who went out and enticed the Jews to sin, now in the camp of Israel. What is he going to do? Say, take them out in the middle by the tabernacle and stone them all? 26,000 women? What are you going to do? Well, let's find out. Verse 13. Moshe and Eleazar the priest and all the leaders of the congregation went out to meet them outside the camp. Verse 13. Verse 14. And Moshe was angry with the officers of the army and captains of thousands and captains of hundreds who had come from the service in the war. And Moshe said to them, have you spared all these women? Are you out of your mind? Look, these are the women that caused Israel to sin, you dummies. Verse 17. Now therefore kill every male among the little ones, the kids. Kill all the male children in the camp of Israel. And kill every woman who has known man intimately. So if they've had sex, kill them. But if they're virgin women, keep those ones alive. Because they're not the ones who caused Israel to sin. The women, the girls. I can't understand what you're saying. The girls that did not cause Israel to sin, the virgins, keep them alive. The women who did have sex,
Mine says
kill
to
them.
keep them alive for yourself.
I haven't gotten there yet. But all the girls who have known man intimately, who have not known man intimately, in other words, they didn't cause Israel to sin, keep them for yourselves. They are your captives. So you've just taken a war that's obligatory and turned it into a non-obligatory war of choice.
Right.
Not good. But what do you do? What do you do? It's a problem. So that's about it. That's about all God can do. Go to Deuteronomy 20, back to Deuteronomy 20, the laws for warfare. Verse 12. It does not, if you go out and make war. Well, I'll tell you what, verse 10. When you approach a city to fight against it, you shall offer it terms of peace. So, you're going to try to spare them being slaughtered. Hey, you want to come be Jews? You want to come learn about God? They want to kill you. All right, I offered. So that's what you do first. You try to befriend them. You try to teach them about God. If they don't want it, oh well. It shall come about, if it agrees to make shalom with you and opens up to you, then all the people who are found in it will become your slaves, and they'll serve you. Is this a war of choice or war of obligation?
Choice.
However, if it does not make shalom with you, but makes war against you, besiege it. When the Lord gives it into your hand, you shall strike all the men in it with the edge of the sword, only the women and the children and the animals and all the city of the spoil. That you take as booty for yourself. Is this a war of choice or a war of obligation? Choice. Right? This is a war of choice. Now, I've got it under an obligatory war in the notes, but you can see that. So, try to make peace. They don't make peace. Now, in an obligatory war, it's the same thing. You go up, you try to make shalom. If they don't make shalom with you, what do? Annihilate, right? Annihilate everything that breathes in a war of obligation. But you do make, you try to make peace. You try. You try. You try to make shalom. You try to teach them Judaism.
Scorched earth.
Yes, if they don't accept it, it's a scorched earth.
Exactly.
All right. Go to Exodus chapter 3. Now this I asked you before, and Doug was the only one who went back, as far as I know anyway, and checked it. Exodus 3, verse 8. God says to Israel, "So I've come down to deliver Israel from the power of the Egyptians and to bring them up from Egypt to a good and broad or spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to a place." Now, in that land that's big and beautiful, filled with milk and honey, it is a land of Canaanite, Hittite, Amorite, Perizzite, Hivite, and Jebusite. How many evil nations? Six. Six evil nations. Chapter 3, verse 17. "I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanite, Hittite, Amorite, Perizzite, Hivite, Jebusite." Chapter 13, Exodus 13, verse 5. "It shall be when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanite, Hittite, Amorite, Hivite, Jebusite." There it is again. Chapter 23, verse 23. Why is God repeating this so many times?
Pictures.
Right, it's a picture. 23:23. "For my angel will go before you and bring you to the land of the Amorite, Hittite, Perizzite, Canaanite, Hivite, Jebusite." Chapter 33, verse 2. "I will send an angel before you and drive out the Canaanite, Amorite, Hittite, Perizzite, Hivite, Jebusite." Chapter 34, verse 11. "Be sure to observe what I'm setting up for you this day, because behold, I'm going to drive out the Amorites before you, the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite." How many times did God say that? Six. How many evil nations were there?
Six.
Now, why do you think God did that? It's a picture. It's something that's said over and over and over and over, so that we get the point that it is a repeating picture. Why? What does this have to do with praying? With spiritual warfare? I've never heard this taught in the church. Have you? Has people in the church said, "Well, that's a Canaanite spirit, and we need to pray against that Hivite"? People don't care. I'm not saying that's what they should say. I'm just saying, have you ever heard it? I never have. But it's here in the scriptures, and it's repeated 6 times, and it's there for a reason. So, don't you think it'd be smart to figure out the reason? Okay. Hebrews chapter 3. Here's the reason. Hebrews chapter 3. We've been through this passage since we started this congregation, I think 3 times. I believe this is the 4th. And we'll do it 57 more times. Chapter 3. Before we read this, God was bringing the people of Israel into a good and spacious land. It's a good land, right?
Yep.
And it's filled with demons.
Huh?
6 demonic nations,
Oh.
right?
Yep.
It's a good and beautiful and spacious land, filled with demons. Right?
Yes.
It's reality. Gorgeous land filled with garbage. 6 garbage heaps that Israel got sucked right into.
Chicago,
Now, what is that land is the question. Verse 7. Just as the Holy Spirit says, today, if you hear his voice, don't harden your hearts as when they provoked me, as in the day of trial in the wilderness, in Kadesh, where your fathers tried me by testing me and saw my works for 40 years. So I was angry with that generation and said, they always go astray in their heart. They did not know my ways. So I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. When was it that God said that?
You will
In here? No, I didn't say where. I said when. He told us when. What did it say? There was a when. There was a time period word.
Today.
Today. Thank you. Today. Today. So back during the time of Moshe, it was called today. And he said, they're not going to enter into rest. Yes?
Yes.
Take care, brothers, lest there should be in any one of you an evil, unbelieving heart in falling away from the living God. But encourage each other day after day. Now this is talking about believers, yes? So that's from the time of Yeshua up to our day. Yes?
Yes.
Day after day, as long as it is still called today. So today stretches from the time of Moshe all the way to our day. Got it? It's going to get much clearer. Lest any one of you be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. For we become partakers of Messiah if we hold fast to the beginning of our faith firm until the end. And now he repeats that verse again. While it is said, today, if you hear his voice, don't harden your hearts as when they provoke me. So now he's applying that verse to believers in the first century. And to us, I assume. So it's still called today. He said it now twice. Right? He said it twice. For who provoked him when they heard? Indeed, did not all those who came out of Egypt led by Moshe? Who was he mad at for 40 years? It was those who sinned, whose body fell in the wilderness. And to whom did he swear they should not enter his what?
Rest.
His rest. His rest. But to those who were not submitted, it does not say disobedient. It does not say disobedient. In Greek, it's the word, the 2 words, hupotasso, crammed together into one word. Hupotasso. It means under the hand. It is a word for submission, and I believe it's kahal. 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 I can't remember what it is in Hebrew. I just wrote it. Kalat, kahat, kalat, kahal. It's something like kahal. Kahel, maybe. And it is related to the word kahal, which is congregation. It means gathered together. It's the same word in Genesis, talking about the blessing of Judah, when it says that to him, to Shiloh, shall be, whatever that word is, be. The Gentiles will be gathered or submit to Shiloh. It's the same word. It is not obedience. Verse 19. We see that they were not able to enter. Hold on. Not able to enter what? They weren't looking for rest. What were they looking for? Land. Weren't they? It doesn't say that. Hold on. It doesn't say they were looking for land. It says they were looking to enter what? Rest. Back during the time of Moshe, it was a time period called what? Today. During the time of the first century, it was a time period called what? During our time, it's a time period called what? Today. And there's another thing that they, way back during the time of Moses, were waiting to enter. What's it called? Rest. And so we see they were not able to enter rest because of unbelief. But they were looking, I thought, for a land. Therefore, let us fear, lest while a promise remains of entering his rest, any one of you should seem to come short of it. For indeed, we have had good news preached to us. Well, they had good news preached to them too. They had the gospel preached to them too. And it wasn't mixed or united with faith by those who heard it. We who believed enter that rest. Just as he said, and he quotes it now a third time. As I swore in my wrath, they will not enter my rest. Even though, now here it takes a left turn, and it sounds crazy. It just takes a left turn. Although his works were finished from the foundation of the world. What the heck does that have to do with the story he's been telling? Does that sound crazy? Those people back then, they wouldn't listen to God, and so they were trying to enter the land, but it was called rest, and they couldn't enter the rest. It was called today, and it was called today, and now it's called today later, and they couldn't enter rest, and we can enter that rest, even though his works were finished from the foundation of the world. When God finished his works from the foundation of the world, what did he do? He rested. When?
Seventh day.
On the seventh day. And that's what he's going to say. For he has thus said somewhere concerning the seventh, and God rested on the seventh day from all his works. And again in this passage, they shall not, and now he quotes it a fourth time. And again in this passage, they shall not enter my rest. So what is rest?
Seventh
He
day.
didn't say Shabbat, he said seventh day. So, in Moshe's time, it was called what? Today. In, well, say David's time, when this verse that was written, has been quoted 4 times, was written. In David's time, what was that time period called? Today. In Shaul's time, the 1st century, what was it called? Today. In our time, what is it called? And we are all of that time period of today waiting for what? The seventh day. Rest. The seventh day. The seventh day. Verse 6. How many times has he quoted that verse? 4. Hasn't he quoted it 4? 4. Since therefore it remains for some to enter it, and those who formerly had the Basar, the Basora, good news preached to them, failed to enter because of, what is that word? Not submitting. Not submitted. He again fixes a certain, what does it say? Day. 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 Say, today. Saying through David, after such a long time, from Moshe to David, just like he said before, the 5th time, today, if you hear his voice, don't harden your hearts. For if Joshua, this is not talking about Yeshua, this is talking about the dude Joshua who had led them into the land. For if Joshua had given them rest, he, God, would not have spoken of another. What was Joshua trying to lead them into? The good and spacious land?
Rest.
Seventh day. Joshua wasn't leading them into a land. He was supposedly leading them into what?
War.
Rest. The seventh day. If you didn't get it by now, he said it 5 times. And he brought in 7 different aspects of it. So if you didn't get it by now, you're not listening. Joshua was not leading them into a land. He was leading them into the 7th day. The Messianic kingdom. Now, go back and look at those verses. Look. Exodus 3:8, 3:17, 13:5, 23:23, 33:2, and 34:11. What was Joshua trying to lead, hoping to lead, trying to lead Israel into? This, what? The seventh day, which is filled with 6 evil nations. Think about this. The kingdom is filled with 6 evil something or others. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Keep trying. So we can apply the verses about warfare going into the land and doing. When you go into the land, is it obligatory or choice war? In the land, is it obligatory or choice?
Obligatory.
It's obligatory. It must be done the way God says to do it. It's not a command. It's not a command. But God has brought us to the classroom. We're in the classroom. You can either listen or not listen. That determines if you're a good student or not. And some of you are horrible students. And some of you are okay students. And some of you are great students. And some of you are right in between. You're a C student. It's up to you. Say, I'm in the same boat. All right, let's go to Matthew 11. Maybe this verse will make sense to you now, I hope. I never understood this verse until pretty recently. And I've been a believer 41 years. And I didn't understand this verse until somewhat recently, the last couple of years. Matthew 11:11. Oh, let's go to verse 9. Let's start in 9. 11:9. Why did you go out, Israel, to see a prophet? Talking about John. Yes, yeah, he's a prophet, but he's more than a prophet. Why did you go out to see a prophet? Yeah, I say you, but one who's more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, behold, I send my messenger before your face who will prepare your way, prepare the way of the Lord before you. This is the very last thing that was said to Israel in Malachi. The very last verses of Malachi. Truly I say to you, among those born of women, there has not arisen anyone greater than John the Immerser. But he who is least in the kingdom is greater than John the Immerser. What in the world does that mean? This is the guy, the last thing that God said to Israel before Yeshua came. I'm going to send Elijah before your face to prepare the way of the Lord. And then here comes John. And that's him. Elijah is John. John is Elijah. That's him. But the one who's least in the kingdom is greater than that dude. Strange, right?
Yeah.
Read that again, verse 11. Truly I say to you, among those born of women, there is not arisen greater than John the Immerser. But he who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than that guy. And here it gets even worse, weirder. And from the days of John the Immerser, it's only been a few months. From the days of John the Immerser until now, it's only been a few months. The kingdom of heaven suffers violence. And the violent men take it by force. What did they take it by force?
Kingdom.
The Messianic kingdom. The Messianic kingdom. Here's 6,000 years. This time period was called in Hebrews what?
Today.
What was this time period of these 6,000 years called in Hebrews?
Today.
Come on, guys. Today. And after that comes a day, a seventh day, the day of rest, the Sabbath of God, the Messianic kingdom. And each one of those days is 1,000 years long. That's why the church, I don't know why they do this, like, I'll just leave it at that. Call this the millennium. Because millennium means 1,000 years. Why don't they just call it the kingdom? But they don't, they call it the millennium. which is not a biblical term. So each day is 1,000 years, and all 6,000 are called today. And Yeshua says, of all those born of women, of the flesh, for 6,000 years, although he's talking right here, year 6,970, right around there. And he says, from the beginning all the way till now, John the Immerser is the biggest of those, the best, the greatest. But the one who is in the kingdom, in this time period, even the least in the kingdom is greater than John. Now, you're going to have to get your mind in the time period of the kingdom to understand this, or else you're not going to understand it. What suffers violence?
The kingdom.
Who do you think is attacking the kingdom? Good guys or bad guys?
Bad guy.
Good guys.
Good guy.
Good guys. It's a war. It's a war. Is it a war of obligation or a war of choice? Let's find out. Remember, he said, you're going into the land where there'll be 6 evil nations, right?
Right.
The land is not really the land. What is the land?
Kingdom.
The kingdom. You're going into the kingdom where there are 6 evil things. And you're to go make war. Is that obligatory or choice?
Obligatory.
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 This is an obligatory war, which means it's good guys making war in the kingdom.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
That's all we got in the Bible to go by. Is what there's in the Bible. That's all we got. And there's 2 wars. There's obligatory war, there's war of choice. This is in the kingdom, so we know it's where God has Israel living. So it's in the land. They're not supposed to be in there. So you got to get them out. So you got to go make war and annihilate them. Make sense?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Now, who did this? Who stood in front of 400 prophets and said, I'm going to slaughter all of you? Elijah. And Yeshua says, there's Elijah, there he is.
Yeah.
Look what he's doing. He's going right in the face of all these demons and establishing the kingdom. You are sons of the devil. You're not doing Judaism as learning from it. You're doing Judaism to obey God. You're under the curse of the law. So they chopped his head off. He was making war to establish the kingdom so that Yeshua could say, okay, now here's what the kingdom's like. Come on, guys, come in with me. That's the whole story. That's it. It's that simple. It's not deep. So Elijah, I got a picture of it here for you that I did for the TLB Bible, the Tree of Life version of the Bible. Oh, let's turn the lights off so you can see it. And this has Elijah praying like a Jew in front of this giant altar surrounded by water, got water on top of it, water around it, and yet it still burns up the sacrifice because a lightning bolt comes down from God and burns it up. And here's all these pagans surrounding him, hocking and spitting and beating themselves with chains and swords and drawing blood and hitting themselves on the head. It sounds kind of familiar.
Yeah.
And I got these pictures, by the way, from the internet, from the Muslims during Eid. From the Muslim celebration of Eid, when they hit themselves in the head with swords until their blood gushes out of their head. This hasn't stopped. They're still doing it.
Yeah.
They're still doing it. They're worshiping their demons the same way they always have. And that's just Muslims. There's all kinds of other junk too. But this is Elijah establishing the kingdom. Let's turn the lights back on. This is Elijah establishing the kingdom. So here's what we need to think about. Here's what we need to think about. Number one, when we're praying, when we're doing, quote, spiritual warfare And by the way, I don't think I'm ever going to say that term ever again. When we're praying properly and we're doing war, there's things that we do wrong. There's things we're doing that are just stupid.
Yep.
Because they come out of Christianity. Well, I don't want you to think Christianity. They come out of Hellenism, the way of the Greek and the Roman, which infested the body of Messiah. And they're right out of there. I'll give you one example right now, just one. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every voice that rises up against you shall be whatever it is.
Isaiah 46:15.
How do you know that applies? How do you know that applies in the situation that you're in?
Pastor said something.
Whatever the reason. How do you know? Maybe it's 180 degrees in the wrong direction. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying, how do you know it's right?
Somebody is right.
That's not the point. The point is you need to figure out what's wrong. We need to figure out what we're doing wrong to fix it.
Just like medicine. You gotta know
That's
what's
correct. Just like medicine. Thank you. You can't figure out how to attack the cancer cells until you can get an MRI and see the cancer
It's the
cells.
symptoms, yes.
Right?
Yep.
Right?
You can't see what you're doing wrong until you can name it. You got to be able to name what you're doing wrong. It shouldn't be up to me. I can do it, but it shouldn't be up to me. It should be up to each individual person. Are you with me?
Amen.
Yep.
I told you you're not going to like what I'm saying.
I like it.
It's just starting now. We're just getting started. So here's, just wait. Just wait. Mr. Toad's wild ride is going to get better. So, we got to think about this. Are the 6 evil nations clearly identified? Do you know who they are? Really? When you're praying, you know who they are?
My neighbors? I'm joking. The Catholics? Mary's neighborhood?
See, I just threw something out at you, you believed me. I'm lying. I just say when you're praying, can you identify? This is about the kingdom. This is a war of obligatory warfare. It's not when we're praying, oh Lord, please touch Jacob. It's not about that.
Is it like that?
This is obligatory. This is the kingdom.
Yes.
Can you identify the 6 evil nations that are in the kingdom? Can you?
Really?
Then how can you possibly do anything good for the kingdom?
It's like that scripture, right, Rabbi, that says the kingdom of God suffers violence.
That says what?
That scripture that says the kingdom of God suffers violence.
Yeah, we read that. The kingdom of heaven suffers violence. In other words, there's warfare going on. It's a war of obligatory. It's not choice. It's obligatory. Every believer needs to make war for the kingdom.
There, amen.
Yes.
To the, okay, their names in Torah, the nations, it's not at that point. But in the kingdom, are their names different?
I'm going to tell you. We're going to start working through it a little bit. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. I'll give you a hint. If you wanted to know what if they're named in the Torah, who the demons are, or who the nations are, how does that correlate to the kingdom? Do we have scripture that tells us? We'll talk about that.
All the eyes?
All right. So here's another one. Can you name the enemy? Can you identify and name the enemy in the kingdom? So here's what I'm saying. Jews pray like this. Why don't you? If that's a little picture of the kingdom. Hey, there's the kingdom. How come you don't do that?
I do.
Because you haven't been taught to do that. Right? So how you pray, where did that come from? This is a little hint to start thinking about. Just trying to make it identifiable for you. Can you identify and name the enemy that's in us? Yes, that's not like the kingdom.
Hellenism?
Okay, let's talk about this a little bit more.
Or carnal nature.
Yeshua said that the one who's in the kingdom, the smallest one in the kingdom, the guy who's got an F in the class, he's in the class. He's got an F. Greater than John the Immerser. Greater than John the Immerser. Who's Elijah? Why would a kid who's got an F in the kingdom be greater than John the Immerser? What do you think?
Oh,
Because John the Immerser's back here. It's not deep. It's simple. The one who's in the kingdom is in the kingdom, in the day of the Lord. That means he's been resurrected, he's gone into the kingdom, he's got a resurrected body, he knows Yeshua, he's born again, right? John the Immerser is in a worse position than that guy, even though he's a horrible, horrible student. You're starting to see what I'm saying? So where is your rank in that kingdom that hasn't come yet? Where is your rank? Are you an A student, a B student, a C student, a D student, or an F student? I hate to use letters, but you know what I'm saying.
I'm the kid in the corner.
Which one are you? Which one are you? How closely? Okay, let me say it this way. If the kingdom came right now, would you know how everything's done? Or would you fight? Why did the Jews do it that way? I want to reinvent the wheel. I don't like the way that's going. I want to do it something different. Why? Why do we have to do that? Why are we doing that? What's going on? How come you Jews do that? What's going on? Why are you doing that? Why can't you do it the way I say? This is the way I learn. I want to do it like that. That puts you at the bottom of the class. You are an F student if you try to reinvent the wheel of what God gave the Jews.
Amen.
I just read a website that looks so pretty, done by some Christian, obviously a Christian. It's all about Torah, Judaism, Torah without the rabbis. So I'm like, well, maybe he's like, he sees that the rabbis are trying to put obedience on the people, and he doesn't want that. It's cool. I start reading it. All it is a Christian trying to reinvent the wheel. We need to do the Melchizedek priesthood, and you're not doing the Melchizedek priesthood, so you are not even a believer.
They don't know anything about that.
It's just nuts. And this is one out of 50,000 Christian websites that are trying to reinvent Judaism. We don't need to reinvent anything. All we got to do is get what the Jews got and let it preach to us so we can know God. That's it. That's it. If you're not doing that, you're not getting the knowledge of God. It's that simple. And the one who's an F student, who's been born again, in the kingdom, resurrected, going to do whatever job he's got in the kingdom, is better off than John the Immerser because it's before the kingdom. It's way back here. It's during today.
So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
If it ain't wrong, don't fix it. Exactly. Problem is, Christians think that everything Jews do is wrong.
Correct. That's it. That's the problem.
They don't see the beauty in it. They don't see the truth in it because it doesn't preach to them, and they don't open their ears to listen to it. And neither do the Jews. Everybody's trying to do commandments and obey God instead of letting Judaism simply preach to you so you can know God. That's the bottom line. That's all that matters. Everything else is fluff. It's all ridiculous. If blowing the shofar during a Elul doesn't speak to you, you're dead. Or you don't even know how to hear it. Or you're fighting against it. There's really only so many ways you can go with this stuff. Can you identify and name the enemy that's in you? This is what Elul is for. So that's why I'm teaching it. The month of Elul is so that we can identify the enemy that's in us. That doesn't match the kingdom. But we've got the kingdom in us. But there's 6 evil things in there. So you identify it. Do you know the enemy's tactics? I don't even want to talk about that. Do you know how to make war? Do you know how to make war so that you can establish the kingdom in you. Do you know how to do that?
No.
Throw an idea at me. Pitch me an idea. What do you think? What is a way that you can make war to establish the kingdom inside of you? What do you think? Say it again. Doing the mitzvah. Good answer. Anything else? Read the Torah. Good answer. Anything else? Read the Mishnah. How do you do Judaism? Good answer. Anything else?
Shabbat.
You know, the only ones that are answering are the Martinezes.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Listen.
Listen to
The mitzvot.
the mitzvot that you do. Exactly. Good. Anything else?
Pray in the Spirit.
Pray in the Spirit. What the heck does that mean?
Let the Holy Tongue speak.
What? How? How do you do that? I can't hear you.
The language gives you.
You mean in what they call tongues? That's not a bad answer. Not at all. Not a bad answer at all. Praying in the Spirit. I'm glad you said it that way, by the way. Praying in the Spirit. Or praying in tongues. Absolutely. You may not know what's going on, but it's building up your spirit. Absolutely.
The Spirit.
Anything else? Any other way to fight against what is not kingdom inside of you? Praising God, worshiping, dancing, singing, hitting the tambourine as hard as you can in rhythm.
Thank you.
Make praise, make noise, make worship happen. Yeah, absolutely. Strange that that's last, but okay. That's good. All right, so here we go. Judaism, or walking with God, is not obligatory. It is not obligatory. That's the war of choice. Making war for the kingdom is obligatory on every believer. Not doing Judaism. I'm sure God would love for all of his children to know him. I will. Making war as a choice, doing Judaism, is not obligatory. It's a choice. And it's not incumbent on every believer. I'm sure God would love for every believer to know him. But every believer ain't going to know him because they're going to make choices. Bad choices. Horrible choices that will keep them from the knowledge of God. But it's not, don't think it's obligatory. You shall keep the Sabbath day. You shall keep it holy. Does that sound obligatory or choice?
Sounds like it.
It sounds obligatory, doesn't it? It's a commandment. It's a law. It's a statute. Yes, and you must keep it. And we know there's no such thing. We know that it is not commandment. It's tzva'ot, set up for establishments. And there's no such thing as obey. What's the word? So listen. No. Listen. Hear. Shema. 100% of the time.
Shema.
In the concordance, 100% of the time. It's not obligatory. It's choice. The only war we have to do, we must do because God needs it to be done, is what? I'll say it again. The only war we must do because God needs it done is what?
Kingdom.
Say it loud.
Kingdom.
Say it loud. War for the kingdom. War on the kingdom. That's the only obligatory war that God requires for every believer. That's it. And what that means is getting this to match that. The Jews pray like this. Why don't you? It doesn't match. This, oh Lord, thou art so exalted in thy whatever it is. Doesn't match. Where's the intensity? Where's the strength? Where's the movement? Where's the rhythm of God?
Why do they do that?
My My purpose is not to teach right now how to do Judaism. It's to let you see the problem. I want you to identify the problem. Quit coming to me and asking me, teach me how to do this, teach me how to do that. You need to find out. You need to study the Torah. You need to study Judaism to figure this out. It's too much on me for one person. I can't do it. But I can help you identify the problem. I can. I can teach you a little bit here and there. But that's it. That's all. There's only one of me. So, why don't they match? Why doesn't the church match the Jewish kingdom? All right. Now, that is obligatory. That's not choice. Judaism is choice. Judaism is choice. Now look at this. Look at these amazing, amazing words by the prophet Chaim. He said, this verse, when you go out to battle against your enemies and the Lord your God delivers them into your hands, and you take them away captive, is that choice or obligatory?
That's choice.
You're taking captives. Choice. Choice. It's not in the land. It's not in the kingdom. It's far away. And this is what he says. During Elul, we make war on our evil nature and we find repentance. The verse as a reference to the constant struggle to fight the Yetzer Hara. That means the evil motivation, the evil intention, evil inclination. We must realize that the strength we have to fight the evil inclination comes only from God. And the eternal your God delivers them into your hands, he says. The Lord God delivers them into your hands. Is this choice or obligation?
Choice.
You're taking captives. Is it choice or obligation?
Choice.
It's choice. It's choice. And he says the end result of you making the choice is that God will deliver them into your hands. You will have victory if you make the choice. You will. God promises it right there. They will be delivered in your hands. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Literal Hebrew says, when you go out to war against your enemies, and Jehovah your God will deliver him into your hands. But it's a woman. Right?
Yeah.
A woman. You take her home, you make her ugly, and then you're like, who needs that? And you let her go. But it says you take him.
Right.
It cannot be talking about that woman. Can it?
Yes.
You got lost.
Yes.
No, it can. It's a woman. It's a woman. It's a chick. Let's read it again. You got lost. Let's read it again. The literal Hebrew says, when you go out to war against your enemies, and Jehovah your God will deliver him into your hands. Look at the original verse. When you go out to battle against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers into your hands, and you take, now what it says is, them away captive. It doesn't say that. It says him away captive. Him.
Just
It's a chick that you make ugly and then you reject. How can it be him? Wow. You're looking at me like you are confused. How is it confusing?
Because it's talking about gold.
How can she be referred to as him? It ain't talking about she. It's talking about her as a picture of the enemy. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's just a picture. It's not a law. It's not a law. It's a picture. She is a picture of him, the enemy. Is it choice or obligation?
Choice.
choice.
Choice. Choice. So, you want to make war on an enemy. I don't know how specific to get about this because you're going to get lost if I do it, I think.
Right.
I'm not very good at this. I'll just make something up. I've got kidney cancer. All right? I've got kidney cancer. Don't say that, Michael. God forbid. Don't get over it. She's ridiculous. I've got kidney cancer. And you all are praying for me. And somebody goes, Oh, no. Somebody that I met said, oh, brother, you've got kidney cancer. You need to go to the doctor. And somebody says, no. Every voice that rises up against you in judgment shall be whatever it is, whatever the verse is. You made a choice. That's the verse you chose. That's the thing that you want to attack, kidney cancer on Michael Washer, God forbid. Right?
Yep.
And that's the choice you made in prayer. What if it's wrong?
What if it's right?
Wrong. What if it's wrong? What if that is not what God wanted? That's not the warfare he wanted waged. What if the warfare that he wanted waged is that Michael Washer offended somebody in 1996 and hid it and buried it in the backyard, didn't tell anybody, now it's coming up to catch up to him. And he's bitter about it. He's bitter. Michael Washer is bitter about this person who did this thing, and the bitterness caused kidney cancer. Why don't you know? Why don't you know? Why don't you know what to pray? Why don't you know? Not why do you know, why don't you? Because you're stupid. I told you you're not going to like what I'm saying. Because you're stupid. We are stupid. We're ignorant. We don't know what to do. Because we don't know Judaism.
Exactly.
It's that simple.
Actually, when you hold something back, it's usually, like you said, they did this to me, and they left me whatever. The body.
No, I made something up. Please don't do that. I made something stupid up.
Okay.
I told you. I said I made something up. It's not real. This is a not real example. Please.
Can I use a real example?
No. I said I don't want that. I said I don't want a real example. I want to make something up. That's what I said. So that you can follow the process. I don't want to use something real. No, please, stay with me. No, stay with me. I said this, the ground rules, before I played the game. The ground rules are this. I'm not good at this. I shouldn't use an example because you're going to get lost, and you did. I want you to just track the process. Why don't we know how to pray? We're making the wrong warfare most of the time. We're making choices that aren't right. I'm going to get more specific about why. That's all I'm going to say. So, this is a war of choice. You're making choices in warfare. Let's read that again. The literal Hebrew says, when you go out to war against your enemies, and Jehovah your God will deliver him into your hand. But the picture is a woman that you take captive. Got it?
Yes.
So she's a picture, because it says him. The verse begins by referring to many enemies, right? You're going out to war against a bunch of enemies, right?
Right.
And but God will deliver a single enemy, him, into your hand. This is a reference to the internal enemy, inside ourselves. This is a warfare that is choice. It is not obligatory. Judaism is not obligatory. It is choice. And the purpose of Judaism is to help perfect ourselves. It's not about salvation, right? It helps us become better people, to learn about God, so we can become better at who we are. We can become a better version of us. It's inside. That's the him. It's inside. It's one person. One person. All you can do is fix yourself. One problem at a time. And there are times for that, like right now during Elul. Elul is specifically set aside for repentance, right? How are you going to attack the cancer if you can't see the cancer? How are you going to repent of what you don't know you're doing wrong? Right? It's not a shotgun. Well, maybe I hit it, maybe I didn't. It's a laser beam. That's how you kill cancer. You use a laser beam And you get it targeted, and you find that exact thing. You cannot use a shotgun thing to fix yourself. You can't. You've got to be specific and clear and precise. This is why Judaism is so picayune and precise. This is why the church is not. The last part of the verse is, and you shall take some of him or it captive. Some of him or it captive. Some, a little bit. I'm not the same person I was even a year ago because I repented last year of stuff. I'm going to be different next year than I am right now because I'm going to repent of some stuff. One thing at a time. I'm going to take some captive. Just a little bit. You guys want me to tell you everything all at once? Do one thing. One little thing. But you got to identify it. If I ask you, what one thing are you repenting of this year? Be specific. What are you working on that God wants you to get rid of? What is that one thing? I can tell you what it is. You should be able to tell me. You should be able to tell anybody. I tell the kids in school. My students in school. I tell them. Look at this. By taking the Yetzer Hara captive, we overcome our natural human tendency to cut corners and make bad choices. It is a profoundly difficult thing to take one's negative urge captive. Take it captive. That's the he. That's the it. It's your negative. It's our negative urge, our Yetzer Hara. But yours is probably different from mine, and you got to be able to name it. To act recklessly, make bad decisions. Overcoming our evil inclination is nevertheless possible because God will give you the strength, if you're open to it, to deliver it into your hand. You got to be open to it. Don't fight. Don't fight. Don't argue. You got to be open. You got to let him do it. Or not. It's a choice. But that's what Judaism is for. It's a war of choice. Become better and better and better. But it does not happen. Please don't think it happens if you cannot name the problem. It can't happen if you can't name the problem. It can if you do. That's when you're open to it. Second Corinthians 10, 2 through 5, which you don't know. You've heard, but you don't know it. The reason I say that is because I've never heard any of you tell me what this is in Judaism through your prayers. What is this in Judaism? The Jewish book, guys. What is this verse in Judaism? 2 Corinthians 10, 2 through 5. I know you're familiar with it. Say it again. We do not war according to the flesh. Now, what we got to figure out, is this a war of choice or a war of obligation? We do not war according to the flesh, for the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but powerful in God for the destruction of, what does it say? Fortresses. What do you think it is so far?
Obligatory.
Is it in the land or is it outside the land? Is it choice or is it obligation? What do you think so far?
Obligatory.
Choice or obligation? We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God. And taking every, and it doesn't say thought in Greek. Well, it says thought in Greek, but it wouldn't say thought in Hebrew. It's not thought, it's motive. It's intention. Yetzer hara. It's intention. Taking every intention captive to the submission, there's that word submission, Messiah. Is it obligation or is it choice? Is it making war on ourselves or is it making war for the kingdom?
So, choice.
ourselves. Choice. It's choice. This is talking about Judaism. This is talking about the Jewish walk. Now, it doesn't read like that in Greek, because you got that word thought in there. It's not that in Hebrew. It's intention. Yetzer, the Yetzer Hara, which we're supposed to take captive. Taking every motivation captive. Go get it. So why did you just say what you said? Why did you look at me like that? Why did you look at her like that? Why did you say that to her? Why did you say that to him? Why did you do that act? Why did you say that? Why did you do that? It shouldn't be up to me to do that. It should be up to you. I do that with me. Eileen does that to me too. I do that with Eileen. Eileen does that with herself. It should be up to each person to ask themselves, why the heck did I answer like that? Why did I look at that person like that? Did you guys ever see the movie The Chosen? It was in the 90s. Written by Chaim Kotak. They turned it into a movie with Rabbi who plays a Hasidic boy. Did you ever see that movie? Anybody? No? Great movie. Great movie. It's about Judaism. And the Hasidic boy threw a baseball. Well, he played baseball. The baseball was thrown to the Hasidic Jewish boy, and he hit the ball specifically to hit the pitcher right in the eye.
Oh, yeah.
And he hit him right in the eye. He did exactly what he wanted to do. And the boy who was pitching was not Hasidic, he was Orthodox. A step back from Hasidic. So later on, they meet and they're talking, and the Hasidic boy goes to visit the Orthodox boy in the hospital. He's got a patch on his eye, and he's got glasses and stuff. And the Hasidic boy says, I don't know why I did that, but I did that. I asked myself, why did I do that? Why did I do this? The reason is, he tells the Orthodox boy why he wanted to put his eye on it. Because he asked himself the question, why do I want to do this? That's Judaism. You never see that in church. You just don't. You just don't see it. People don't go up to each other and go, I looked at you like that because I hate your butt. I think you're an idiot. And I wanted to hurt you because I'm bitter against you because you said something nasty to my wife. You don't do that. That's Judaism.
I do it.
You're a Jew.
They're like,
And since you said something publicly, you don't do it enough.
what?
What you do it. You're right. Taking every motive captive. How many?
Every.
How many?
All.
6?
All 6.
Okay. How many? No, those 6 are in the kingdom. This is war.
That's right.
All of them?
Yeah.
How many?
However many there are.
Yeah.
How often?
Always.
How many at a time?
One at a time.
One at a time. That's all we can handle.
Well, I mean,
And God created a beautiful cycle of the year with times that we can.
Yeah.
Elul being one of them.
Yes.
From Elul to Yom Kippur.
So
It's specifically set aside. We don't have to do this all the time. Thank God. You do it on the festivals, do it on Shabbat, do it on the new moons. That's what they're for. They're not just to suck off of somebody who's teaching you. It's to look at yourself
Examine yourself.
from what is being taught and fix something. One at a time. All right, Exodus 24:3 says, Na'aseh v'nishma, do and then hear. Remember, this says this. Those things that are in us, they're rising up against the knowledge of God. The knowledge of God, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Na'aseh v'nishma says, do and then hear. You do the tzitzi, the talks, you listen to it, you get the knowledge of God, right?
Yes.
Okay, this, whatever it is, thing that's in us, things that are in us, rises up against that. Don't do that. Don't listen. Don't do Judaism. Don't listen to Judaism. Don't get the knowledge of God. It has to be the way I say. Why can't it be the way I say? Why can't I be in control? Why can't I say what's what? Why can't I give the bottom line? Why can't I be heard? Why can't I? Why can't I? What about me? Me. Instead of, what did the Jews say? What did the Jews say?
Why did I do
What
that?
did the Jews say? Why did they do that? Why did they say that? What did the Jews say? What does Judaism teach? What did the Tzion tell me last week? Or whatever it is you did? It's not us-centered, it's God-centered. The only way to do God-centered is to do the mitzvah and let it talk to you. So then, Deuteronomy 11:27 says, you'll get the blessing if you what? Listen to what?
Mitzvah.
The mitzvah, not to God, not to the Holy Spirit, unless it's through the mitzvah. The Holy Spirit gives her words, his words or her words, through the mitzvah. Zechariah 9 something says that. I think it was 9:14. So we do a mitzvah. I found this outside on the ground.
Oh, listen.
It's a tzitzit
Yeah.
with the blue in it.
Oh, throw it this way.
It's all right. So we do it tzitzit, we do a mitzvah, we wrap it, we learn, we see it, we do it, we learn from it, it teaches us, it talks to us, then we get a little bit of the knowledge of God. Jeremiah 9:23, remember it says, don't brag about your money, don't brag about how great you are, don't brag about how wise you are, don't brag about any of that. If you're going to brag, I want you to brag that you know and understand the Lord. You have the knowledge of God. However, you got stuff in you fighting against that knowledge of God. And you have to go to war against it. Is it a war obligatory or a war of choice? Choice. Exactly. Very good. Good class participation. So, walking with God is a war of choice. Here's another one in the New Testament that you don't know. You think you know it, but you don't know it. Because you haven't seen it in or through Judaism. And I'm saying this confidently because I know. Because I hear you pray. See to it that no one takes you captive. Is this about a war of choice or a war of obligation?
Choice.
Choice. You're told you're supposed to go get a captive and bring her in and make her ugly so that you hate her so that you get rid of her. But in this case, they're taking you captive. Through, what does it say? Philosophy. That is Greek Sophia. Greek wisdom, Greek knowledge. The way of the Greek. Through philosophy. And empty deception, which is talked about 1,000 times in the Torah as idolatry. Not the Torah, the Tenach, the whole Old Testament as idolatry. According to look what it says, tradition of men. And so Christians immediately think that this is talking about Judaism. And it's not. It's talking about philosophy and empty idolatry of the Gentiles.
Hellenism.
Tradition of men according to the elementary principles of the world, instead of according to Messiah. And then in Colossians 2:20, in the next same chapter, he defines his terms for us even better.
Right.
He says, if you died with Messiah to the elementary principles of the world, what was this stuff called? Idolatry, tradition of men, philosophy. He called it the elementary principles of the world. So therefore, the elementary principles of the world are what? Are what?
Philosophy.
How would you bundle all that stuff together? What would you call it?
Wrong traditions.
Hellenism. Greek thinking. Gentile idolatry. Way of the world. Philosophy. The tradition of men. This is the rituals of the Gentiles. It's not rituals of Jews. It's rituals of Gentiles.
Correct.
Communion. I don't even know anymore. The Eucharist. I don't even know Christian words. What are some Gentile traditions? I don't even know. Easter Sunday, Christmas. Well, Christmas is
Sunday church.
Sunday church, rosaries.
Oh, sacraments.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
They all start with a C. Church, choir,
Yeah.
Catholic,
Yeah.
catechism. They all start with a C. But all that stuff is traditions of the Gentiles. That's what takes you captive. That's what takes you captive. And if you think you're not captive, you're wrong. If you think you're not captive, you're wrong. You are. Philosophy, tradition of men, rituals of the Gentiles, and empty lies. I love this verse, 2 Kings 17:15. It said that they rejected Judaism and decided to follow vanity, the way of the Gentile.
Right.
And it uses the word vanity, just like it does here in Colossians. It's the same word.
Isn't Hellenism making war against Judaism?
Yes, Hellenism makes you war against Judaism. It's a lot of lie. Yes, that's what he's talking about here in this passage. In Colossians, in both of these passages. That's what it's talking about. And by the way, this is in Colossians 2. And right in between this verse and this verse is the kosher laws, the new moon, the Sabbath, and the festivals are a shadow cast by Yeshua.
Amen.
That's the context in which this is written. That Hellenism takes you captive so that you can't know God. You can't. You think you do, but you don't.
That's right.
And I'm very aware that I keep saying you instead of we. I know I am. I know I am. There's times I'll do that and times I will not do it. And today it has to be said.
Thank you.
So we got two warfares. We got obligatory war, which is what? Which is what? What's obligatory war?
Kingdom.
Making war for the kingdom. And that's in us. That's in us. And we have the war of choice. That's also in us, which is doing Judaism. So let's go back to the war of obligation. Taking the kingdom by warfare. Number one, are the 6 evil nations clearly identified? Well, it's talking about the kingdom. So what do you think the 6 are?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think the 6 are? Yeah. Let's go to the internet. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. We're talking about the 7th day. What do you think the 6 evil nations are? 6 evil nations. 6. 6.
6 days.
The 6 days of today.
Right.
The way of the world. It's the way of the world. It's the 6,000 years of mankind. The way of the world.
All the stuff we've done.
And all the problems of mankind are summed up in those 6 Jews that are mentioned in the Torah. You can look up their names. You can find out more about them. You can discover more if you want to. It's a big study. Find out more about why those guys were chosen. Yes.
So the nations are more like philosophies or ways of thinking?
Well, yes, they are. Say that again?
The nations are the 6 ways of thinking of...
No, that's not what you said. You said that the 6 nations are representative of the thinking of the Gentiles. Is that what you're saying? Exactly right.
That is correct.
So one...
Do you know the enemy's tactics? Now, there's only been 2 groups of enemies against Israel. Only 2. Let's think about the nations that have risen up to destroy Israel. That Daniel saw from the time of Daniel. Babylon. Well, I'm sorry, before that. From the time of Isaiah. Assyria, which became the landmass of Babylon. which became the landmass of Medo-Persia. And then what came after that? Greece and Rome, Hellenism. That's it. You got Babylon stuff and you got Hellenism stuff. That's it. Greece. You got Babylon, you got Greece. If you were to take all the problems in the universe, in human beings, and boil them down to two problems, it would be Babylon and Rome,
Yep.
or Greece. That's it. You got that in you. I got that in me. You got more Greece in you than I do. I got more Babylon in me than you probably do. Probably. Because I'm Jewish. I'm not Greek. I'm not a Christian. I've never even been in a church, except for 3 years that I was teaching Judaism in that church. That's all I did.
The enemy had you captive.
Yeah. So, can you identify and name the enemy? Babylon, which is Assyria, Persia, and Hellenism, which is Greece and Rome. That's all there is. Do you know the enemy's tactics?
Now that you're saying it,
It's to kill, steal, and destroy.
Maybe a little.
Too simple.
Both kinds.
Way too simple. Way too simple.
Counterfeits.
Hellenism causes you to kill, steal, and destroy. I don't buy that.
I said the enemy.
What is Hellenism? We're not talking about that. We're talking about the two enemies. The two groups of enemies. Hellenism and Babylon. How does Hellenism get you away from God? The knowledge of God. How does it do it?
It makes it a way of the world.
Too generic. Be specific. Hellenism.
Recreating the traditions through
To be against the Jewish way,
counterfeits.
With lies of theology, right?
How? Be specific. You can't, can you? So you need to go find out. We're not going to do that right now. You got to go find out. What is Hellenism? How does it work? How does it get you to stop thinking like a Jew? You're going to have to study it. I'll give you one hint. The guy who spread it, who was the king over it, you know his name?
Alexander the Great.
Not even Constantine. Not even close.
Wasn't Alexander?
Yes.
I said
Alexander.
Alexander.
I couldn't hear you, buddy.
No.
Alexander. Alexander. Go find out.
You taught him
Go
Greek.
look in the scriptures what he did.
More Constantine.
Go look in Jewish history what he did.
Taught him Greek.
So that's that. It's just a hint. All right. Here's the basic. What I'm trying to do is narrow it down to make it simple. Thoughts against Torah.
Right.
Thoughts. Thoughts. Not feelings. Thoughts. Brain. Everything in Hellenism is about thought and brain. Philosophy. Right. No, the opposite of Judaism. The opposite of Judaism. In Judaism, everything is about the gut,
Amen.
heart, feeling. Not about brain, about feeling. Blessed are you, Lord our God. Lord our God, everlasting King. O Lord, thou hast given us good thoughts, that we might think good thoughts and be good people. One's thought, one's feeling, gut reactions, gut feelings, gut putting your guts out there. Chutzpah. Chutzpah. That means courage. Chutzpah. Even sounds like what it is. All right. Now here's a good one. Do you know Jewish warfare tactics? I can't even do it.
Good.
Right? Every voice raised up against you shall, whatever. I can't even do it.
Yeah.
Can't even do it. That's not warfare.
Do it with so draw.
That's not warfare. It's only warfare if it's the right thing, for the right person, the right time. And what does that have to do with getting Hellenism or Babylonism out of your heart? What does that have to do with making war as choice on your Yetzer Hara? Not on somebody else. On your Yetzer Hara. On my Yetzer Hara. You know in the New Testament when it says if you're sick, go to the elders and lay hands on you and they'll anoint you with oil and they will pray, they will rise up for the sick and the healing, whatever it says. Those verses that you know so well, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think they were praying? Torah. They were praying the Jewish prayer. They were praying Torah. They weren't praying whatever you feel like. Or you were told in your brain by some pastor to do each time because it works really good. We're going to pray the prayer of Jabez. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Okay.
So the basics of Jewish warfare, and by the way, I left one off of here, which is really, really, really important. I left one off of these tactics, and I can't believe I did it because it's so important to me. It's so important to me. The basics of Jewish warfare tactics are Torah study. Study. Not read the Bible. Study the Bible. Pore over it and in it until you figure out what the heck is going on. Do and hear the acts of Judaism. Doing and hearing the acts of Judaism. Can't hear it till you do it. Do one at a time. Don't try to do a bunch. Do one at a time. Listen to it, learn from it, and move on. Go to the next one, and add, and add, and add, one at a time. And then, this is the one that everybody hates, but I love, honesty. What? No, I wanted to, hit you in the eye with the baseball. I did. I wanted to hurt you. I wanted to break your eye. Why did I want to do that? I want to hurt you.
Yeah.
I don't like you. I don't like you. I don't like you. That's why I wanted to hurt you. So, I'm going to buy you a house. Honesty. And then I
Beep. Got censored.
I don't want this off the tape. I gotta put this on. Oh, it's on my end.
Can't play. Turn it off first.
Turn it off first.
Turn it back on. Push it in and twist.
I can never do this. They got big hands.
Get it?
I don't know. All right. It's not going to be on this, but it'll be on this. Yeah. Faithfulness. 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 Fourth time. Faithfulness. In Judaism?
Yes.
In Judaism?
Is that on? Is it on?
This is what I tell the kids in school. I tell them, everything I say by nature is a promise. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I, by God, do it.
Amen.
I can't find anybody who's faithful.
I'm faithful. When I was faithful.
Sometimes, if you're going to say it out loud, I'm going to say it out loud. Sometimes you are. You are not always faithful.
You don't know me.
are not always faithful. No, yes, I am.
Well, I am too.
No, you're not. I'm only doing this because you said something out loud. So I'm saying something out loud. This morning, Big G, and his family didn't get any sleep last night at all because some pagans were having a Christian party, drinking. They were up all night party. Nice Christian party. And they didn't sleep at all. They were here. As soon as they could be here. Dressed to kill, maybe. Ready to go. Ready to help. Ready to pitch in. Immediately. That's faithfulness. No matter what is going on, if at all possible, work as hard as you can to do what you said. As hard as you can. And since you said something, I was talking to Eileen this week, and I said, Hannah knows submission. She knows how to be faithful. She knows, for the most part, if she says something, I can pretty much trust her to do it. She knows faithfulness. Doug is faithful. If I ask him to do something, he knows how to submit and do it. And if he says he's going to do something, by God, about 78 to 83% of the time, he does it. 82.84. 82.84, exactly. No, nothing. All right, so it's not me. I'm at about 95%. I don't know anybody who's that close. And I'm not, yes, I am. I'm boasting. Yes, I am. I do that because I know God.
Right.
And I know that God is faithful. And I want to try as hard as I can to do what I say because the Torah says to do that. So we can reflect what God's like. So I work really, really, really hard at it. And I ask people to hold me accountable. Hey, I'm telling you I'm going to do that. If I forget, please, please, please remind me. Please. Now, that is a war of choice. That's Judaism. That's not obligatory. It's Judaism. So where you're at in that long scale of, 1 to 100%, only you can tell. But you're going to have to be accurate about it. Nobody can tell you. Only you know. People can help tell you if you ask them. Now, let's talk about the war of choice. That's not choice, that's obligatory. And they look very similar, like Jewish warfare tactics. They look very similar. Here's what you do for a non-obligatory war. What? Oh, I'm sorry, I got mixed up. That was a war of choice. All that was a war of choice. So, that's making the kingdom in here. Fighting Babylon, fighting Hellenism, got mixed up. Knowing the tactics of the enemy of Hellenism and Babylon. Thoughts against Torah, replacing theology with Christianity has replaced Judaism, lust and greed. And then Jewish warfare tactics, which are basically how you make war in a non-obligatory war of choice. You do Judaism. Torah study, you do in here the acts of Judaism, you're honest, as much as you can be. Genesis 26:5, Abraham the Gentile did Judaism, didn't he? Didn't he? Remember? He washed the Mishmar, he did the mitzvot, he did the chokim, statutes, and he did the Torah. Remember? Genesis 26:5. He was a Gentile. He was a Gentile. They did Judaism. Leviticus 11. The kosher laws. Pig is unclean, right?
To me.
To you.
Pig is not unclean.
It's unclean to me.
Right. Pig is not unclean. It's unclean to you. You are invited in to do Judaism. It is a war of choice. It's an invitation. You don't have to do it. It's not a command. You want to make pig unclean to you because it's unclean, it's a picture of an unclean spirit? By God, do it. If you don't want to, you don't have to. It puts you lower in the scale, lower in the rank, but it's up to you. And then if you do it, and you do it as a law, that puts you even lower in rank. Because that's no good either. If you're going to do it, you have to listen to it. You got to listen to it preach. So therefore, it says in Leviticus 11 that the pig and all the other animals that it lists, the 4 other animals it lists, are unclean to us. That all the creeping things are unclean to us. That the fish without fins and scales are unclean to us. And it says it 13 times, 12 or 13 times. To you, to you, to you, to you, to you. And yet people don't even see it. Which is why in Romans chapter 14, Paul says this, same exact thing. I know and I'm convinced in the Lord Yeshua that nothing is unclean in and of itself. It's unclean to the one who deems it, believes it, accepts the invitation for it to be unclean to him. He's just quoting Leviticus 11.
Correct.
And then Galatians 5, which I don't even want to get into, the fruit of the Spirit. I don't even want to talk about it because we have so many crazy ideas about what this is that I can't possibly even begin to talk about it. But I will say this, it ain't what you think. I'll tell you that, it's not what you think. It is what occurs from doing Judaism and listening to Judaism and getting the knowledge of God. And that's really all I want to say about it. Because the fruit of who? The fruit of who?
The rock.
The Spirit. Well, whose words is it that we hear through the Tzion?
The rock.
So they better be the same. If you're telling me what you think love is, and it ain't what this is saying, you're wrong. Does that make sense? If you're telling me what you think peace is, but it ain't what Judaism says peace is, you're wrong. If you think you know what patience is, or ruach, lengthening of your spirit, you think you know what that is, but it ain't what Judaism says, it ain't what the Tzion preached to you, you're wrong. So am I. If they don't comport, if they don't match, we're wrong. And that's really all I want to say about that. So, bottom line, there's 2 wars that we don't have to, but can undertake. We have to undertake getting that time period of rest of the kingdom into here. Making war on our own Yetzer Hara so that we match that kingdom. That's obligatory on every believer. Think about that. But doing Judaism is not obligatory. It's an invitation. If you want to do it, do it. You want to come to class, come to class. If you want to be good in class, be great in class, do it. If you want to come to class and get on your cell phone and kick your feet up with a beer in one hand, do it. But you ain't going to be good in the kingdom. You're going to be very, very low in rank. It's all about how much we put into it, not how much you suck out of it. Right? Does that make sense? So it's incumbent on you to do the work. It's incumbent on me to do the work. All right. I hope I've made sense. This is a tough one. This is a tough one. Right? So let's pray. Abba, thank you for Elul, for the time that you set aside, that you created, that we can examine our hearts, at least on one thing, and repent and change and grow. And I thank you, Abba, for Rosh Hashanah that's coming, and the 10 days of awe. And I ask that you give us great strength, that you give us Gevurah Gadol. And I ask in the name of Yeshua that you begin revealing by your Spirit the differences, the very, very huge differences between Judaism that you created and Hellenism that man has made. And help us to see the difference, and help us to reject and make war on those things in us and take it captive and win those battles instead of losing those battles constantly. In the name of Yeshua. Amen.